That's a 1949 Fender Super, which is, there wasn't a high production total of them anyway, and it's extremely rare amp. That one's in not real good condition, but still is what it is.
Does it work?
Oh yeah.
What do they sound like? What kind?
Very warm sounding, very warm, and not modern amps have more what you might call high fidelity to them. The highs are brighter, the lows are deeper. These are just warm sounding, and they really made a great product then. They were more interested in, I think they didn't just research and develop, they sat back and listened to the product and say, okay, is this good? And they would, of course, put it in different scenarios and see how it worked, and they were more interested in making sonically a product that worked well, you know, that people could use. And here's another amp back here. That's a 1936 Gibson amp, and probably one of the first electric guitar amps made. And there's a 1957 Fender Deluxe. Here's a more modern Fender Super Reverb. Now you're getting into more high fidelity sided things.
What about the Gibson, the 36? I mean, that's a real old amp. I didn't even know they made them back in the 30s.
Yeah.
Who were they making those for? And what's the?
Well, they were made actually right, and of course Gibson was in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and the amps were actually made out of there. Now I don't know the history that much on Gibson amps, but they are absolutely wonderful. They didn't sell as well. They were more expensive than Fender amps, by and large. I think they tried to make it a more upper line product, whereas the Fender was like a working man's type rig. I mean, great quality. But I think Gibson was trying to present theirs as a higher echelon product, and so they were more expensive, so people tended to buy the Fenders more. And but the Gibson amps are just absolutely wonderful.
What does that in Gibson go for?
That amp is probably about $1,500.
$1,500 bucks.
Yeah.
What about the
Fender Super? In that condition, $2,500. If it were clean, it would probably be 3 times that price.
Really?
Yeah.
And what about the little Fender? That's a Fender Deluxe.
That's a '57 Fender Deluxe, and it's still sort of in the same sonically, the same tone as these other two we've spoken of. And it wasn't until the early mid '60s that Fender started designing their products, number one, to be louder, put out more sound, the wattage was higher, the fidelity was greater, the highs higher, lows lower, and of course rock and roll was coming in pretty strong then, and people were just basically playing louder. You know, in the 30s, 40s, and early 50s, you really didn't play that loud. You know, you didn't think about it. And Fender amps, they designed them to really, they would even tell you in the brochure that you shouldn't play it over half volume. You shouldn't turn it up any higher than that. And of course people did, and they got the classic sounds out of them. That's a 50s Fender Bandmaster. That's kind of a rare amp. And
that one is a real nice looking amp too.
Well, actually the tweed, it should have tweed fabric on it too, but it's been taken off. A lot of times they would do that if it got in bad shape, they'd just strip it down. But the cabinetry is beautiful, and you can see how well made it is. And really, if you just listen to it, it has tone on its own. And I think that's why these old Fender amps sound so good. The cabinetry is so well made. The wood is great, and of course it's well seasoned wood. And it just, sonically, the cabinet adds a lot to the sound of an amplifier, whereas a lot of modern amplifiers, if you ever go by and pick one up, they're extremely heavy. And to me, that just kills the sound of the amp. All you're getting is the sound of the speaker. You're not getting the resonance of the cabinet. And
you don't find that on these. You don't find that on these amps. You find that they're.
They were designed that way, to be resonant.
I imagine it takes more time and effort to do that. And so when you're
better
mass producing
wood
stuff.
Yeah, better wood and stuff like that. You know, it's all based around cost-effective numbers, you know, like anything else. That amplifier there, that Fender Twin amp right there, that amp is probably worth $7,000, and that's another piece of equipment that I've had since about 1980. I got the guitar and that amp right about that time. Didn't know any better, you know, and extremely rare, extremely valuable.
Did you take that out now?
I tell you, that amp is just too loud.
Oh, really?
I mean, and I mean, for a 1958 amplifier, it's extremely loud. I mean, it's powerful, and they made a powerful amp back then. You know, most of the places I play just use smaller amps.
Yeah, so you don't want to blow people out of the room.
Yeah, you can't really get it up enough to get the good sound out of it. You know.
So here we are outside of Atlanta Vintage Guitars. Can you see anything aside from my big head back there? There we are, Atlanta Vintage Guitars. We just spoke to Frankie at Atlanta Vintage Guitars about a bunch of stuff they had, and I didn't know what to expect when I came in here. And he had some super neat stuff. The amplifiers he had in there. I don't know if you. I would have loved to have heard him. We didn't really have a way to do that today. I probably would have had to have talked to him a little bit more about that. So maybe sometime we'll track down some of those old Gibson and Fenders and give them a listen.